Summoner Yuna, you have inflicted dire injury upon Maester Seymour Guado.
Maester Seymour is already dead.
Send the dead? You would have to send me too. Sin cannot be truly defeated. The rebirth cannot be stopped.
If all life were to end in Spira, all suffering would end. I will take your life and become the next Sin. I will destroy Spira. I will save it.
The Comlands. Long ago, the High Summoners fought Sin here. The summoner I guarded on my first pilgrimage died here.
Sometimes Yuna would just stare off into the distance. I finally understood why. She was saying goodbye to the places she'd never see again.
Chapter 32, Mount Gagazet. As the group climb up the mountain, they are ambushed by our dear friend Biran. Behind them, Kelk and Yankee approach. Kelk orders Yuna and her guardians to leave Mount Gagazet, as it is a sacred mountain, and they are enemies of Yevon, and an enemy of Yevon is an enemy of the Ronso. Then Yuna says something pretty shocking. Yuna tells him that she has cast aside Yevon and no longer follows the temples, and for this, Kelk threatens them with death, a fate Yuna is willing to face. Even Waka is all anti-Yevon now.
Yevon has warped the teachings and betrayed us all.
Nothing but a bunch of low-down tricksters, eh?
Yeah!
When Yankee calls them blasphemers, Kimahri rushes up to Biran to protect Yuna. Auron and Lulu manage to talk Kelk into understanding their position by comparing it to his own, as he walked away from Bevel but still protects Mount Gagazet. Not as a maester, but as a Ronso. That's what Yuna is doing, protecting Spira from sin, not as a Yevonite, but as a Spiran. Kelk is moved by Yuna's dedication to Spira, despite the fact that the temples have shunned her and the people hate her. Because of this, Kelk lets her pass through Gagazet.
Summoner Yuna, your will is stronger than steel. Tempered steel that even the mightiest Ronso could not hope to bend. Yuna, we bow to your will. Now go. The sacred heights of Gagazet welcome you.
Before they continue, Auron confirms that what he thought seems to be true, and Yevon is indeed in turmoil. Tidus doesn't really seem to care, but as Auron says, this is because Tidus isn't from this world. But for Spirans, if Yevon is falling apart, it means that a time of pain is coming for everyone. Then the group continue onto the mountain, but before they make it far, Biran and Yankee stop them. They say that despite the fact that Yuna and her guardians can pass, they will not allow Kimahri to continue after his shaming of his own people. They believe Kimahri forgot his people and his home. Before they even finish, Kimahri knows exactly where they're going with this. The mountain only accepts the strong, and thus, if Kimahri wants to climb,
Then I must prove my strength.
the duo challenge Kimahri and mock him, reminding him who it was that broke his horn. However, Kimahri is sure that this time he will win. Tidus tries to step in and back Kimahri up, but Kimahri stops him as this is his problem, and the Ronso deal with Ronso problems. With that, a 2v1 begins. Kimahri versus Yankee and Biran. Because in this fight, you can only use Kimahri. This can be a pretty tough fight if you haven't used them much, even though they level up with Kimahri. It definitely was for me the first time I used him because he had pretty much no abilities. And I wasn't really keeping up with his weapons because Kimahri is my least favorite character as far as gameplay goes. However, if you level him up a decent amount of times, this battle isn't that bad. Just be smart by focusing one down so you don't have to fight a 2v1 for long. Preferably you want to focus Yankee down. Then Kimahri and Biran can have their 1v1. But Biran will be berserked. Anyways, Kimahri eventually defeats them both, and Biran gracefully accepts Kimahri's victory. In fact, Biran even tells Kimahri that he's happy about how much he's grown and how strong he's become. Biran then presents Kimahri's name to the mountain as the strong warrior who defeated him. Must be some kind of ritual. And now, Kimahri can officially climb the mountain. Before the group continue, Biran promises Yuna that he will stop any Yevon's pursuers that come for them up the mountain as penance for breaking Kimahri's horn. Yankee then tells Yuna that when they make a statue of her, as they do all high summoners, they will shine hers the brightest. When Yuna laments that they will probably never make a statue of a traitor like her, Biran says,
Then Ronso will make. With grand horn on head.
That would be wonderful.
Finally, the group make their way up the mountain.
Summoner Yuna!
What is it this time?
Jesus Christ. Titus is really expressing how players feel right about now. They just stop her to honor her one last time by having all the Ronso sing the Hymn of the Faith for her. Now, finally, the group can actually climb the mountain. On their way through the mountain, they find one of Braska's sphere that he left behind in his journey. This is the sphere showing Braska's message to Yuna. I won't go over it again because I already went over this in part 3 of this series. So sometime later, they come across a guy named Once. We've met him a few times, sort of. He was briefly outside of the Kilika temple. Then he was creeping on Yuna on the boat to Luca. Then he's behind Yuna at some point in Luca, creeping on Yuna with his camera. We also see him getting bullied by Biran and Yankee when we meet them at the Moonflow. If you revisit the Far Plane before going to the Thunder Plains, you can actually see him talking to his sister. Apparently, she was a summoner who died 7 years prior, and she resembles Yuna, which is why he creeps on Yuna so much. The last time we see him is when he randomly stops in front of the Far Plane Inn to take a picture of Yuna and her guardians. Well, now we finally get to meet him in person. He introduces himself as Owaka's brother. Apparently, Owaka was arrested for aiding Yuna. Before Owaka was carried off, he told Once to take over his business to continue helping Yuna, and that's what he's doing now. I guess they want to help her finish her journey as a way of honoring their sister. Finally, after a lot of climbing and a lot of Fiend Machina fighting, the group make it to the entrance of a cave which will lead them to the top of the mountain. As the group continue forward, Riku and Titus stay behind to talk about the fact that they are very close to Zeddarkand, but they still haven't thought of any way to save Yuna. The problem, as Titus says, is that they don't know anything about the final summoning. They have nothing to go on, so he hopes to find something in Zeddarkand that will help them solve their problem. Then, as they start walking away, Riku sees something that shocks her. It's Seymour. Titus immediately tells Riku to run ahead and get the rest, and she does so with some hesitation.
Now is your time to die. Prepare yourself, son of Jekt.
Not if I can help it!
Save some for Kimahri!
The group very quickly make their way back to Titus and they all confront Seymour. Yuna immediately starts trying to send him, but her attention falters when Seymour says,
Allow me to say something to the last Ronso before I leave. Yours was truly a gallant race. They threw themselves at me to bar my path, one after another.
Kimahri refuses to believe what Seymour is insinuating, and Seymour tells Yuna that she could end Kimahri's suffering, by killing him. We're back to this freeing the world of pain by killing everyone ideology. He still thinks he's going to convince Yuna to make him her final aim. When Titus gets between him and Yuna, Seymour informs him that when he becomes the next Sin, Jet will be freed. This almost gets to Titus, but he quickly recomposes himself and charges at Seymour. Before Titus can get to him, Seymour jumps into some weird pod thing that raises up behind him as his form changes yet again. Seymour has now become Seymour Flux.
You have angered Kimahri. The spirits of the Ronso will guide Kimahri's spear.
This is arguably his most difficult form. It stumped me for days. He has the Lance of Atrophy ability, which can zombify someone, meaning that healing spells and items will hurt them. And this is probably the first time you will be encountering the zombify status effect. Oh, and what does it do right after turning into a zombie that gets hurt by healing? he casts full life on the zombified character. What happens when you use a reviving ability on a zombified character? They die instantly, no matter how much health they have. Think you're going to cast spells on him? Nope. He's going to cast Reflect on himself so your spells go back at you. Think you're going to cast Reflect on yourself to avoid his spells? Nope. He's going to cast he's going to cast his spells on himself so they reflect back to you, and spells can't be reflected twice. And then there's the fact that he has 2 attacks that deal massive damage to everyone. One of them being aptly named Total Annihilation. Long story short, this is not a boss fight for the faint of heart. I was not prepared for this my first time through this boss. In fact, the only reason I was able to beat him is because I found a loophole that made Final Fantasy X one of the easiest Final Fantasy games ever. That is, overdrives are overpowered. If you just give all your party members overdrives and all your Aeons overdrives, it's almost impossible to lose. Your Aeons only last 1 turn against any Seymour battle because they all have anti-Aeon abilities, but 1 turn is all you need for an overdrive. And that's exactly what I did my first time through. And my second time. It wasn't until later that I decided that I actually wanted a challenge and tried to beat him by more legitimate means. But anyway, sorry for rambling. This guy is tough. Keep in mind that zombify mechanic, by the way, because this is just the intro of it. Eventually, the team managed to defeat Seymour Flux, but instead of getting sent, Seymour just kind of meanders away.
And stay up there!
Yeah, that's how I felt my first time I beat him without Aeon spam. As the group walk away, Yuna recalls what Seymour said.
If he becomes Sin, Sir Jecht will be saved.
Arntar tries to dodge this by ordering everyone to leave, but Yuna knows he's hiding something. Arn stays quiet, but eventually Tidus breaks the silence and tells her the truth, that his father is Sin. He's not sure how or why, but he is. After some convincing, everyone believes him. All Yuna can tell him is that despite this, she must still fight and defeat Sin. But Tidus is okay with this as he believes this is what Jecht would want. Waka, realizing that this means Jecht killed Chapu, decides to pretend he didn't hear anything. After this, the group continue onto the Gagazet cave. Near the entrance, they find something pretty ancient. A wall full of fates whose energy is being focused on one point. Those are the fates of Zeddarkand. Of course, nobody in the group knows this, well, except for maybe Auron? All they know is that someone is conducting a summoning as they speak, using all of these fates, which surprises Riku as that's a lot of fates. Lulu wonders who could wield so much power as to beckon so many fates at the same time, and what they could possibly be summoning with all these fates. Riku accuses Auron of knowing more than he's letting on, but he essentially tells him to figure it out on their own. Tidus then touches the wall of fates and passes out. When he wakes up, he's in Zeddarkand, his Zeddarkand, or at least a vision of it. He goes inside his house and there he finds Bahamut's fate, the little boy who's been creeping on him for a long time.
A long, long time.
As he talks to him, he sees visions of Waka and Riku who are trying to wake him up, at which point he realizes that this is a dream. If only he knew how right he was. Well, he's about to. The faith tells him that it's not that he's dreaming.
You are a dream.
The faith leads Tidus to his balcony, where he summarizes the Machina war to him. Then he tells him about the faith that sacrificed itself to create Zeddarkand in a dream state. Finally, Tidus starts to figure out what this means for him.
The people? What? They're all dreams? Me? Too?
After the faith tells him that if the faith stop dreaming, their dream will disappear, including him, Tidus, who accepts the idea of being a dream really easily, tells the faith that even if he is a dream, he's enjoying being alive, but this is when this visit starts making more sense. The faith tells him that he and other faiths have been dreaming for a long, long time, over 1,000 years, and they're tired. You see, the faith would have probably stopped summoning Zeddarkand a long time ago, but they're constantly being beckoned by Yu Yevon. So they can't, not as long as Yu Yevon lives. He doesn't tell him the stuff about Yu Yevon, by the way, this is just me telling you. Anyways, what Bahamut, the faith, does do is ask Tidus if he and his father will let them rest as they're tired after 1,000 years of summoning. He tells them that both him and his father, Jet, are dreams that have been touched by sin, making them different than other dreams. And so perhaps he could be the dream that could end the fates dreaming. In other words, he believes Tidus could be the one to kill Sin and Yevon for good. And with this, Tidus wakes up. As everyone tries to make sure he's okay, Tidus plays it cool as if, he didn't just find out that he isn't really a physical being that exists in the way that we think of existing. He's just a dream. He makes sure to keep a straight face and, almost like Yuna carrying her burden for the sake of her friends, he decides to carry his knowledge alone in order to not intervene with Yuna's journey. Finally, they make it to the Gagazet cave, which leads to Zeddarkand. Not much happens here except for the fact that normal enemies start feeling more like mini-bosses. After some puzzles and exploring, the group make it to the end of the cave. As the group walk outside, Arn warns Yuna that Yunalesca awaits them in Zeddarkand, and that she will send strong fiends to test their strength. Yuna is surprised to hear Yunalesca is still alive, but Arn says that she's as alive as Seymour and Micah. She's an unsent. Once the team make it outside, Arn's warning comes true as they encounter the Sanctuary Keeper, a strong fiend sent by Yunalesca. This fight is tough, but it's not that bad as long as you're careful. However, it is kind of a level gate for Yuna. You see, the Keeper can heal itself for an obnoxious amount of health, making it almost impossible to kill. The trick? Use Reflect on it, so when it tries to heal itself, it actually heals you. But if Yuna hasn't gotten Reflect yet, well, you're kind of screwed. You can also get unlucky with his photon wings and get a combination of debuffs that make him almost impossible to remove them because of a loss of control of your team. And if he uses Mana Breath, it's almost a guaranteed death for most party members. Despite all this, if you're careful, the Keeper goes down with some trouble, but it's not as bad as Seymour Flux. Eventually, the group defeat the Sanctuary Keeper, and Riku, knowing what's coming up next, asks if they can rest as a way to buy themselves some extra time. For what? To think up of a way to keep Yuna from dying. But they refuse to stop, so Riku decides to just think on the way, as Tidus laments the fact that they're nearing Zeddarkand. Arn laughs as he is reminded of his younger self.
Before, the closer I came to Zeddarkand, the more I wondered. When we arrive, Braska will call the final Aeon. He will fight Sin, then die. I thought my mind was made up long before. But when I stood here, my resolve wavered.
Never would have figured. Legendary Guardians choke sometimes too, huh?
Legendary Guardian. I was just a boy. A boy about your age, actually. I wanted to change the world too. But I changed nothing. That is my story.
Arn quietly walks away after this, and Tidus and Waka follow close behind. Finally, after all of this time, Tidus sees it. What he's been pining for since he arrived on Spira. His home, Zeddarkand.
A city dead for 1,000 years. A city I had to see with my own eyes. The end of Yuna's journey. The last chapter in my story. My thoughts, they kept floating up and then slipping through my fingers, slipping away before I could pin them down with words.
Chapter 33, Story's End. As the group continued down the mountain, Riku stops just to say no. She refuses to let Yuna die. Despite Riku's protest and her asking for simply more time to think of something they can do, Yuna is prepared to do what she must. She knows that every day they spend delaying this is another day Spira suffers under the Sin's terror. So instead of arguing with her, she just walks towards Riku and hugs her. As she does so, she thanks Riku and a sphere falls out of her kimono. As she holds Riku, Yuna asks Riku to thank Sid for everything he did to save her, but Riku refuses to do so as she tells Yuna that she can tell him herself. Whether she really believes it or she's just not willing to say the truth out loud, Riku still holds on to the idea that Yuna will live through this. After this, the group continue down the mountain, but Tita stays behind as he picks up the sphere that Yuna dropped and listens to it. Turns out that it's a sphere she was recording while she was sitting outside of the Mihan High Road Inn. It's essentially her last words to her friends, a will of sorts. In the sphere, she tells Auron what an honor it is to have him as a guardian and thanks Auron for protecting her. She also tells him that she had always wanted to meet him ever since he sent Kimahri to find her.
I don't know how to thank you. Perhaps if I defeat Sin, that will be my thanks to you. That's what I'll do. Yes, I will challenge Sin. I will defeat Sin. If you are all there watching this, then I guess Sin is already gone. And so am I suppose.
Speaking of Kimahri, Yuna reminisces on the day she met Kimahri, remembering how sad and scared she was, but noting what a kind and gentle person he turned out to be.
You said you were looking for the daughter of Braska, remember? At first, I was so scared. Until I realized what a gentle person you are.
Finally, she tells him that she's always liked his broken horn. The next people on her list are Lulu and Waka, who she thanks for being like siblings to her, saying that the reason she was so happy on Besaid was thanks to all the days she got to spend playing with them and Chapu. She even notes how happy she was when they refused to let her become a summoner because it showed just how much they cared about her. At the same time, she apologizes to them for not listening to them.
What else? I love watching you play blitzball, Waka. I even love it when you scold me, Lulu. Really? I guess that leaves the newest guardian. Star player of the Zeddarkand Abes.
She moves on to Titus, expressing how strange it is that she feels so strongly about him, despite how short of a time she's known him. She never outright says it, but she pretty much confesses that she fell in love with him pretty quickly.
So this is what it feels like. It's a much more wonderful feeling than anything I had ever imagined. Wonderful. But it hurts sometimes.
Despite being happy with finally knowing what love is like, she also said that it hurts sometimes, as it makes her realize all the things she won't get to do. The life she won't get to live with Titus. She mentions being afraid, but she takes it back, not wanting to leave such sad words as her final message. Unfortunately, before she was able to do that part over, Titus shows up behind her, and this is when that scene that we saw plays out.
What you up to?
The sphere ends there, as Yuna hasn't had another chance to record more since Mihan High Road. They've had a busy adventure. Having heard all of this, Titus carries the sphere and this knowledge with him as he walks down the mountain by himself. Then at last, they reach Zeddarkand. We finally get to the scene that started this whole game. This is now, technically, the present. This whole time we've just been going back through Titus' story. This has all been Titus telling his story from his perspective, which is why we've been hearing him narrate. I think the idea is that the group made one final stop here to tell each other their story from their perspective, as maybe this way, with their combined knowledge of everything they thought and experiences they went through, they would be able to think of some way to keep Yuna from dying. It's to no avail, however. As Titus desperately tries to hold on to this moment, knowing what's coming next, Yuna, probably picking up on this, interrupts him and tells him that they should stop. So at Yuna's command, the group gets up and they all start heading towards the Zeddarkand Dome, their final destination. The group make their way through the destroyed streets of Zeddarkand, and eventually they reach the Zeddarkand Blitzball Stadium Dome, where Yunalesca awaits. There, they are greeted by a ghostly specter of an old man who allows them entry into the dome after assuring that Yuna has gone through the necessary training. Once inside the stadium, the group very quickly realize that the dome is filled with fireflies and it's working like a giant sphere, trapping people's thoughts and memories within it. The first thing they see when entering the dome is a memory of Lady Yoken, the fourth High Summoner to ever defeat Sin, and her guardian. It's Yoken's guardian asking her to use her life for the final summoning. As the group continue forward, they see memories of Seymour's mother from right before she sacrificed herself to become Seymour's final Aeon. And finally, near the end, they see a memory of Braska, Jet, and Oran. It's a memory I've went over before when Oran tried to stop Braska from receiving the final Aeon. Finally, they reach what is now essentially being used as a Zeddarkand temple leading to the Cloister of Trials. Although considering this whole structure is actually the ruins of a blitzball stadium, I think this is where the players would go into in order to enter the sphere. Anyways, unimportant. After another Braska, Jet, Oran memory, the group enter the Cloister of Trials. Yep, even here. This one's pretty different from the other trials as it works kind of like a memory game where you have to remember where each shape is or start over. After completing the trials, an elevator is activated, and the group go to meet Yunalesca. Nope, just kidding. There needs to be a boss fight first. Meet the Spectral Keeper. He's a pain and I hate him. During this fight, your team can move between 6 platforms around him. His main attack will hit the first 3 in front of him, so you want to move your team to the 3 behind him. Problem is, you move your team behind him, he will just turn around. So one has to stay in front of him as spotter. Probably Oran, as he's probably the tankiest. Second problem, he randomly places mines in one of the platforms that will instantly KO anyone in one hit. And you don't know where it is until it's too late. Enjoy your Russian roulette. Anyways, the team eventually defeat the Spectral Keeper, and finally, they can ride the elevator to Yunalesca. Just like with the other temples, Yuna goes in by herself, but then we hear a memory from Jet as he learns the same thing Yuna is now learning.
Huh? What do you mean, no final Aeon?